This video is entitled "To be guilty of," but what we're really expressing in English is something like "it's my fault" or "it's not my fault." Now, the way that they do this in Spanish is literally by saying "I have the guilt," which would be "tengo la culpa." The guilt here is la culpa. So that's the key word to remember. La culpa is the guilt. So once again, how would you say "it's my fault"? Tengo la culpa. I have the guilt. What about "it's not my fault"? No tengo la culpa. Literally, I don't have the guilt. No tengo la culpa. It's your fault. Tienes la culpa. It's his fault. Tiene la culpa. It's not her fault. No tiene la culpa. It's our fault. Tenemos la culpa. It's not their fault. No tienen la culpa. Let's use it in the future now. How would you say "it's going to be my fault"? Voy a tener la culpa. So we're using our handle voy a, and literally we're saying I'm going to have the guilt, or I'm going to have the fault. Voy a tener la culpa. It's going to be your fault. Vas a tener la culpa. It's going to be his fault. Va a tener la culpa. It's going to be our fault. Vamos a tener la culpa. It's going to be their fault. Van a tener la culpa. This is another one that takes a little bit of getting used to, right? Because in each case, you have to remember that "it's going to be my fault" in Spanish is more like I'm going to have the guilt, right? So it doesn't match very well. Or if you like, I'm going to have the fault. Voy a tener la culpa. Or it's going to be your fault. In Spanish is you're going to have the fault. Vas a tener la culpa. In all cases, we're using this tener with la culpa. It's going to be his fault. Va a tener la culpa. Literally, he's going to have the guilt, or he's going to have the fault. Let's try a few more now. How would you say "it's going to be their fault if we can't find it today"? Remember to pause and think it out. Van a tener la culpa si no podemos encontrarlo hoy. So here we have, they're going to have the guilt. Van a tener la culpa. If is si, we can't find it. No podemos encontrarlo today, hoy. It's going to be their fault if I have to buy it again. Van a tener la culpa si tengo que comprarlo otra vez. So here we have, they're going to have the fault, or they're going to have the guilt. Van a tener la culpa if I have to, si tengo que, buy it again, comprarlo, and again is otra vez, literally another time. What about this one? It's going to be their fault if you can't go there today. Van a tener la culpa si no puedes ir allí hoy. Let's try it in the past now. How would you say "it was my fault"? Tenía la culpa. Literally, I was having the fault, or I was having the guilt. Tenía la culpa. It wasn't your fault. No tenías la culpa. It was her fault. Tenía la culpa. How would you say "I know it was her fault"? In Spanish, they would say "I know that it was her fault." Sé que tenía la culpa. Literally, I know that she was having the guilt. Sé que tenía la culpa. It was our fault. Teníamos la culpa. We had the fault. It was their fault. Tenían la culpa. Finally, how would you say, I don't know if it was their fault? No sé si tenían la culpa. Literally, I don't know if they were having the guilt. Now remember, in English, we can say, it's my fault, or I'm guilty, or I'm to blame. So we have a few different ways of saying the same thing, but all of that is covered in Spanish with just tengo la culpa. So it's my fault, I'm guilty, I'm to blame. All of that is tengo la culpa. Literally, I have the guilt.